Raven got in a fight with Eric Bischoff over my name. That story's been told multiple times, and it doesn't really need to be told again. But Raven wanted me to be called Skank, and Bischoff said absolutely not. He used some colorful language to shoot that down, but he wasn't going to allow that. We truly got all the way up to my December 8th was my debut match on Nitro against Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
And it was that night we came up with, because the thing was, they took pictures of me and my gimmick, right? And Billy Idol has a copyright on that name and that look. And the WCW lawyers were like, if you copy more than 76 or 78% of his look, you can't call yourself Idol. It's copyright infringement, blah, blah, blah. They're like, you're 100%. We can't do it. And I'm like, well, we're talking about, what if we turn it around backwards? And so that's where Lodi came from. The first time I got called Lodi on TV was my match against Benoit.
Right, cool. And I have seen that match, and I don't think it lasted too long, but
It didn't. But I tell you what, here was there's a really great story behind that I've told and told and told, but I got to throw bits and pieces of it at you again.
Sure.
At the time, Raven was sick in the hospital with pancreatitis. He almost died. He was in the hospital for 11 days.
Shit.
On TV, to cover for him being gone, they set up an angle where Chris Benoit had to beat everybody in the flock to get his hands on Raven.
Right. Yeah.
So I knew a week in advance. We were in Tennessee the week before. I think we were in Nashville, and Sick Boy had wrestled Benoit. And after the show, Terry Taylor said, Lodi, you got Benoit next Monday. So I knew a week in advance that I had to wrestle Benoit. I had not had a match on TV yet. But I was getting a lot of heat sitting in the crowd, the signs and stuff. I was very well hated. And so I got home, and by this time, my old tag team partner, Curtis White Toad, had moved down to Atlanta, and he was my roommate. And he said, you've got Benoit next week. Obviously, he's going to call the match and lay it out for you and tell you what you're going to do. He said, but here's what, if you had a chance to lay it out, it'd be ideal. Like when you climb over the rail, you go up there, have Benoit knock you off and chop you all around the ring. He laid out this whole match for me, basically. Got down to the end. He goes, Benoit's going over. At that time, Benoit was using three different finishes. He would finish with a headbutt. He would finish with a crossface, or he'd finish with a superplex sometimes. And Toad was like, hey, how crazy would it be if he hit you with all three of them, before because he never hits all three of them. And so by this time, I developed a relationship with Benoit because we did run-ins every night. So that Monday at Nitro, we get to the building at 2 o'clock, and I know I've got to wrestle Benoit, and I see Chris in catering around 2:30. So I'm like, hey, Chris, whenever you want to get together, go over our match, just let me know, and I'll be available. He goes, okay, we'll talk about it later. The afternoon goes on. It's 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I haven't talked to Chris yet. I go find him. Like, hey, Chris, we're live at 8 o'clock. Hey, do you want to talk about our match tonight? He looks at his watch. He's like, Lodi, we'll get together later. Just no big deal. And now it's 6:30, 6:45, right? And we still haven't talked. Now, our match was set to go on at the end of the first hour, so roughly around 8:55, 8:50. And if you remember back then, if you've seen a lot of the stuff, sometimes the flock would walk down once the show started. Sometimes we would start the beginning of the show sitting in the front row. And so it's like 7:20, 7:30. And I grabbed Raven. I'm like, hey, are we going out late tonight, or are we going out before the show starts and get our seats? He said, let's go out and Raven wasn't there. It was Riggs and Saturn. Saturn was in charge. He said, are we walking out later or whatever? He said, I got an idea. Let's go out early so we already be out there. For them, that meant more TV time. So it's 7:30. I'm like, when are we going out? He goes, 7:45. I haven't talked to Benoit yet. My first live Nitro match at WCW, and I got no idea what I'm doing.
Right, yeah.
And now I start looking for Chris, and I can't find him. He's nowhere to be found. And I'm dressed. I'm already in my gear and everything because we're going out before 8 o'clock. So we would climb over the rail. We wouldn't come back to the back for my match. I find Chris at like 7:42, and he's got he always had a cup of coffee in his hand. He's wearing his trench coat. And he walked through this curtain backstage. I'm like, Chris. And he looks at me. He's like, what, Lodi? Like I've been bugging him all day, right? And I'm like, Chris, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. It's 7:45 almost. We're walking out at 7:45 before the show starts. What do you want to do tonight? He looked at me, he rolled his eyes. He said, Lodi, what would you like to do?
It worked.
And I paused for a second, and I'm like, because again, Toad and I had planned this whole thing out. So I looked at him and I said, how about, could we possibly, I'm being as nice as I can be. I'm like, what about if we do this and this and this and this? I lay the whole thing out for him. He looks at me and goes, see you out there. Turned around and walked off. That match went exactly to a T the way we laid it out. When we got back in the ring after one of his elbows, I was supposed to cut him off, get some heat on him, and then we went to the finish. What happened was our show was running long. We ran into the 9 o'clock hour. Raw was starting. Referee leaned in and said, Chris, we got to go home now. And Chris grabbed me and set me up for the superplex. He goes, Lodi, I'm sorry. We got to go home now. And the thing was for me, I knew the fans were eating it up when I was because we wanted Chris to beat me up. And so he hit me with a superplex, a diving headbutt, crossface, it was over. Walked back through the curtain, and Arn Anderson grabbed me, pulled me to the side real quick because they cut my heat out. I mean, it's just a straight job. If you go watch it, don't know what was set up or what happened. And Arn's like, Lodi, please don't be upset about that. Look, I can put you over on Hulk Hogan next week if you need to, and you're a superstar. I'm like, Arn, I just wrestled my first match live on Nitro with Chris Benoit, and the fans ate it up. Brother, I'm good. And he's like, you're not upset? I'm like, no, I'm freaking happy. And he's like, all right, if you're good, we're good. And Raven buzzed me right for that. He was in the hospital watching it. He goes, I didn't know you could sell like that. That was freaking awesome. So, I know it was good for my character and what we needed to do. And so it had a lot of good things to it.